welcome to Your Mental Health Matters. My name is Crystal Kelly. Our show is brought to you by Our Neutral Voices. Tonight, we will be discussing a topic that we need to talk about that has been really impactful when it comes to the Black community or across the board. So first, we have a special guest. Ms. Tammy, would you like to introduce yourself and who you're about?
Yes, I'm Tammy Crane. I am the executive director of a nonprofit here in Fort Wayne. We've been around for a while. We are involved with reaching out to women that dance in the strip clubs of Fort Wayne. We want to come alongside them and help them with resources, share God's love, and do whatever we can to support them.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. So our topic is human trafficking, and that is a broad topic. So let's start with a definition of human trafficking. Ms. Tammy.
Yes, my name is Miss Tamara, Miss Tammy.
Yes.
We have a lot of Tammys on the panel today.
Yes, we do.
And we decided on the human trafficking because it is a public health crisis, not just in the Fort Wayne community, but across the nation. And that is defined as an individual being involved by coercion,
Yes.
by force, or by manipulation into a field, whether it's sex, labor, in farm fields and what have you, by force and for profit. So that's the basics of it. And I think Miss Tammy Crane is going to get more in depth with the human trafficking as it relates to the sex trade. And we're going to talk a little bit about risk factors, prevention,
Yes.
and awareness. So please join us, and hopefully we'll touch some hearts, touch some minds to be able to change some things in the community.
Most definitely. So, Ms. Tammy, first let me just ask about the human trafficking. What brought you to this particular topic? What your passion of what brought you to this particular topic?
Well, I think when you reach out to women that are dancing, you do start seeing some trafficking. Most people don't think of dancers as being trafficked.
Right.
My first experience of meeting a gal who was trafficked, it was by her mother. She was 19 years old, and she began to explain to me that she had to give all of her money to her mother. And her mother, she was complaining because she would just want $10, and her mom, it was very hard to get the money from her mom.
Right.
And you could tell she didn't want to be there. My heart just really went out to her. And because of seeing some of those things, then we decided that we would get involved with the Anti-Trafficking Network of Northeast Indiana,
Right.
which is a coalition of agencies and nonprofits like myself. And so we just began educating ourselves some more on the issue. I think when we got into this back in 2008, we really didn't have a clue of the problem that was going on in the United States.
Right, right. So this is like underground. Like everything that's happening that's done in the dark, I mean, this is some heavy. It's starting to come to light. So I know the three of us, we was on the call this morning, and we were talking about the hubs. And I think we had talked about Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio as the hubs for human trafficking. So, Ms. Tamara, let me ask you this when it comes to what you found out about human trafficking. Like, what's your passion that brought you to wanting to bring this to the light?
So I first started hearing about it maybe 10 years ago or so. And at that time, it wasn't well known or and a lot of people are not talking about it because it's underground, number one. And unfortunately, it's a big money maker.
Right.
And from the research that I've read, it's about to surpass the drug and alcohol scene as far as making money, because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, if it has not already exceeded it, because that's been, like I said, some years since I first started looking into this. And my interest and my passion for giving awareness for individuals is because it's impacting the children.
Right,
And
yes.
children as young as 3 years old.
Come on.
So that's an issue with our community, not just the Indiana Fort Wayne community, but nationally. And I know that the Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana is the hub because it's central to the United States, of course, but it's not just in the United States. So I've also read information on the children that are coming from the border. When those kids are separated from the adults, it's like there's no tracking to where these kids are at. And it's been, sometimes years before you know, or before they're connected back with their families. So my greatest passion is to try to put it in some minds to prevent, especially for the children. And I know Miss Tammy is going to talk a little bit about how the parents and the caregivers can be mindful of the risk factors, because predators are reaching out to your kids by phone, which we've already talked about that, and how that's been a central connection to predators and getting to our kids in ways that you would not believe, because they disguise as one individual and turn out to be another individual, and then it's just a vicious cycle. And kids also need to be aware of this.
Come on, that's right. So Miss Mildred, I want to ask you about you as a parent. Was this known, were you aware of any of this back in your time raising your children?
Trafficking? No. You would hear in other countries. I did mission work in Ecuador. You would hear that there, but here, no. And it's funny that we're doing this today, because recently I was watching a documentary about the scam portion of the human trafficking, where they want to get dates or pop up on your text messages. Hey, do you want to meet? And then they have a meeting, and then they'll tell the person, I got kidnapped. And it's a scam and a cycle, and some is true, some are scams.
And then the grooming, that's another thing. And I think Tammy may speak more on that. So the grooming is basically when an individual, say it's an older female, that will pick out a vulnerable younger female and just befriend her and tell her, things are going to be all right, and we'll take care of you, and in a sense become her friend, getting her to trust her. And then it turns out that older female is going to pimp her out, which means either she's going to do it herself or get her connected with some other individuals that are heavily involved with the trade.
So we talked about the definition. I want to get into people who are at risk. So Miss Tammy, can you shed some light of people who are at risk of being trafficked?
Traffickers are smart,
and
so they're going to target the vulnerable. So when you think about the vulnerable population, especially teens, it's going to be the homeless teens. It's going to be the teens that recently relocated, so they don't have that network of friends yet. It's going to be teens where there's maybe mental illness in the home, or there's drug addictions in the home, or they themselves are addicted to drugs. Kids that are caught up in the child welfare system.
That's a big one. That's a big one.
Yes. And so those are the populations that they'll target because they don't have that support system, and they're vulnerable to being manipulated.
Big
time. I have a question.
Go ahead.
What do you think these individuals that target these vulnerable how do they get to them? How do they get targeted?
That's a good question.
How is it that they get to choose them? Or there's instances where they have a van and a car and they get snatched sometimes. How do they do that? Do you have any insight?
The kidnappings are very, very rare. I know that's what TV and movies portray, but that's very rare. They have shown that by talking to survivors of trafficking, 36%, I believe, are familial. So it's family. And then 20-some% are people they know. So slightly over 50% are people that they know already that are targeting them to be trafficked. The other portion are those predators that are online. That are reaching out to teens all over the place and getting them to open up. And if a teen starts talking about their troubled life at home, they're the target because then they can manipulate them and help them feel like they're a safe place when in reality they're not at all.
That's right.
But they portray as being the safe place. And groomers will take anywhere from 6 to 7 months to groom one child. And now they're even doing it through video games.
Wow, that's scary.
Yes, it's very scary because the internet has made it very easy for these people to prey upon our kids. And at one of the anti-trafficking network meetings that we had recently, they've determined that middle school children are now the target for people online to try to entrap.
Yeah, so middle school age is what?
Is that age where they're first starting puberty.
Yeah.
So you got an identity crisis
That's right.
going on with who am I and who do I need to identify with?
Right.
And then you have them separating from their parents in a sense where mom, dad, or caregiver doesn't know anything or hasn't been through anything. So they're at that age, that vulnerable age of trying to establish their identity and their cliques, if you will, for school. And if you have the vulnerable ones that are maybe in foster care or neglected children, they'll tend to stand out, especially with the predators, because one, they're not going to have a quote unquote regular group of friends that can be like a shelter or a protection for them. So if you have that loner or loners, that predator is going to spot them out.
Come on.
You know, the ones that are neglected, the ones that are not being cared for in the home front, and the ones that don't have stability in the home front. And that is a vulnerable stage, and that is a dangerous stage because kids are more impressionable to fit in.
Yep.
And if somebody's grooming them, showing them some money, showing them some material items that they don't have some attention, then they're more likely to get involved with that.
Yeah.
So yes, we do need to do that. And I would even say the younger ones, you know, outside of the middle school, even the elementary school kids, because a lot of them have been through the foster care system. A lot of them are neglected at home.
Right.
And unfortunately, they have already seen a lot on their social medias or in real life, in person. So I think they need to be aware of it too, the dangers of it, and in hopes of preventing, you know, some of that.
So how can we protect our children? What are some things that we need as parents, caregivers, that we need to put in place to protect our children, our loved ones? Miss Tammy?
Well, I would say I would never allow a child to have their own laptop in their room or in a place where you can't monitor that.
Right.
You need to be able to see and be diligent to know who they're communicating with all the time.
Yes, even at all times.
Even with the video games. We tend to want to just let them go do that and not watch over it, but we need to be really diligent.
That's right.
If you see a kid shutting their laptop really quick,
you
need to be suspicious.
Yes.
That, you know, it may not be a trafficker, but you need to be suspicious as a parent if a kid's shutting their laptop, like, who you talking to?
Yep. Come on.
And then also, I think having, even though it's hard, like we're talking like 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 11-year-olds, sitting down and talking with them and saying, you shouldn't be communicating with anybody you don't know.
Thank you. That's it.
If you do not know them,
come on,
don't befriend them. Even if someone else says, oh, they're my friend. And no, they need to know them from school or
That's right.
someplace.
That's right.
So that they're not being duped by someone who's pretending to be a 15-year-old boy
Come
to
on.
a girl.
That's
Yes.
right.
And so we need to set those boundaries for kids and talking to them and letting them know these are the things that are out there,
That's
unfortunately.
That's
and
it.
we want you to be aware of it. And because of that, we're going to watch.
Come on.
So
We're going to take care of it.
That's
Miss
right.
Tammy, what are your thoughts then on bringing that back to the younger kids, like the first and second graders? Because by the time you get to the middle school age,
Right.
a lot of times they're not trying to hear you anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
that's
think
true.
we should start the prevention talk earlier on.
Yeah.
What is your thought?
I do think, and I remember very distinctly my parents having a discussion with me when I was in elementary school. And back then it was, don't ever get in a stranger's car.
Right.
Even if they give you candy. even if
Stranger
they,
danger.
Stranger danger.
Yeah, they know that.
And I think that's important. As they start getting on the computer, which they're getting on the computer younger.
Yes, they are.
And then I think we need to start prepping them about safety on the internet.
Come on.
Safety on their phones.
Yes.
I mean, the way my parents explained to me, because I didn't know about
Right.
sex, they just explained it to me that, they would do things that were not nice and that I shouldn't go with them. And
Right.
it scared me. And I was vigilant as a kid about those kind of things. And
Yeah.
so I do think, unfortunately, in this day and age, we really do have to start preparing our kids.
definitely.
Earlier. And then also when we talked about it can be somebody they know that they're familiar with too.
Right.
So we have to make it, I guess, comfortable for the kids to come to us and not be ashamed.
Come on.
And not be afraid to talk to those trusted adults in their lives.
Be their safe person.
Be their safe person, whether it's mom, dad,
Right.
aunts, cousins, just a trusted relative or, family friend.
Come on.
But isn't that hard? As you said, that a lot of the trafficking, or over 50-something% between the two, is by familiar people. So if we're saying it's people they know,
Right, right.
do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you're telling them, go to somebody you know. Do you know how the trust?
Yeah.
We have to be clear or have a game plan.
Yeah.
I remember telling my kids or giving them words.
Okay.
Every
Code
day we
words.
would change a word. So if I couldn't pick them up and I sent somebody else, I would give them the word.
Okay.
We lived in Georgia in the country. I didn't want them to just go with anybody.
Right.
But yet I needed help. And that was, for me, a safeguard, not even realizing the trafficking or all this other stuff. I
Right.
was just trying to protect my kids.
Yeah, most
Yeah.
definitely.
So going back to the old school way, like
Yeah.
you said, stranger danger and teaching.
I would say teaching them even with the body,
Right.
about
Yes,
their
that's a big
body,
one.
and then what's good touch, what's not good touch,
Right.
Yes.
and what's appropriate, and respecting who needs to respect their space.
Yeah.
And they need to know that at an earlier age. As soon as they're
on.
talking, they need to know that. But then also having that individual, and not necessarily every family member, because every family member is not going to be the good family member
Right.
to talk to, but knowing, or the kids knowing that, this is not appropriate or that's not appropriate. And then they have someone that they could talk to about
Big
that.
time. And one thing I definitely want to bring up when it comes to helping children out is making sure that they are loved, making sure that they have high self-esteem about themselves.
Yeah.
Because again, it goes back to, if you are getting a kid that don't love themselves, that have low self-esteem, that make them
It's a
more
target,
vulnerable.
more
Yes.
risk.
Yes.
Come
Risk
on.
factors.
Yeah.
Yep. That
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah,
good.
it makes a big difference.
Most
It really
definitely.
does.
So another key factor that I definitely want to bring up is cell phones. Kids are getting younger and younger with cell phones. I mean, is it fair to say that's like the gateway, the gateway to the world? Is this device right here?
Yeah. And it's detrimental. I don't care what anybody says, especially if it's not being monitored.
Yeah,
because we have too many stranger dangers out there.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of kids, both the younger ones, the middle school and high schoolers, are spending too much time on technology, whereas I believe that if it's more family time, more one-on-one communication time, that helps with their social aspect. It helps with their emotional being. And,
most definitely.
The electronic devices is not an end-all.
Come on.
And it's unfortunately a detriment for the most part, especially to children.
I mean, they just did a report that came out this week
with the brain health, and it's almost like being addicted to drugs on the factors that it impacts on your brain.
Right.
And we'll go into depth with that on another segment, I hope. I just hope that the parents and the caregivers will eventually, pay attention to that and put those blockers on that phone or that computer, because your children need it. Your children need you physically, emotionally, socially.
Yes.
So they know how to interact with you, number one, and interact with the world and be able to maneuver.
Most definitely.
That's funny you say that about the phones. Just the other night, I was talking to my oldest daughter, and I have a 7-year-old grandson, and it was 11:30 at night, and he's requesting time, and it's a school night. So my daughter's like, Mom, and she lives in North Carolina. Her son's here with his dad. She's like, what am I going to do? So we both call on video.
Okay.
And we're like, go to sleep. We have blocks, you know. If she won't do it, it comes on my phone, and I block because he's always asking, can I get 10, 15 minutes? And we have to be stern with them.
Yes.
We can't keep pacifying them with electronics and things because we're overwhelmed, or we're trying to get to, we're trying to cook, or we're trying to clean. Yeah. So we're going to shut them up, and here's a device. I even see it in the churches where kids are pacified with devices,
tablets, all that.
We're praising God, and they're on their device. We don't know who they talking to, within the church. So I have a question for you. Your program is 410. Where does that come from?
Good question.
So it comes from John 4:10, where Jesus is talking to the woman at the well.
Yes.
He's our model for ministry because he went out of his way to approach a woman where he crossed both social, because he was a Jew, she was a Samaritan, and religious backgrounds. He should not have been approaching her as a rabbi alone to a woman. And not only that, she was a woman that was immoral for those times because she was living with a man. And we know she was outcast because she went to the well at noon. Women went to the well in the morning, they went to the well at night. So she had to go to the well at noon. Yet he went out of his way. Most Jews went around Samaria. He went right through it because he had an appointment with her because he felt her valuable. And so that's what our ministry stands for.
That is absolutely awesome.
It is. Wow, that's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a great topic. I know this is something that is going to be a part 2. That's a given right there.
Right.
But tonight, we definitely want to talk about the definition. We definitely want to talk about people who are at risk, and also what are the things that we can do to protect our children. Another thing that can protect our children as well is being able to get them help. So again, knowing your children, knowing who you're taking care of. If you're noticing depression, anxiety, if they're low self-esteem, get them help. Counseling is a beautiful thing. If anybody can see my t-shirt, I'm a mental health therapist. I'm always going to say, go to therapy. Therapy is a beautiful thing. Being able to have that person that you can talk to, be real with, that could be your safe space.
That is awesome.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally
Are
agree.
there any particular programs for the women that you assist once you help them or kind of build relationships with them? What's the next step? What happens next? Do you see change? Do you see women coming out of that environment and becoming your helper, to be a testimony? Because the Bible talks about people change and transform by the viewing of others' testimony. So can you talk about that?
Of course. I say I totally agree because we know that a vast majority of them were sexually abused as young girls.
Right.
And other types of abuses. So they've developed what's called complex developmental trauma, which totally rewires your brain and your body.
That's a real thing.
And the fruit that we see out of that is increased depression, increased anxiety, anger management issues, isolation. I mean, there's so many results of trauma. So one of the things that we do for the women is to offer trauma therapy with a therapist who does EMDR.
Yes.
For free.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
And then we also do trauma-informed yoga once a month.
I love that.
We're hoping to get an office space open up like spring of this year and increase some of those therapies like art therapy, music therapy, even equine therapy. I'm hoping to connect with somebody for equine therapy. And then just fun activities. Teaching them how to have fun.
Come on.
So we did a survey in the clubs, and I just put on the survey all these different activities. What would you like to learn to do, or what would be fun for you? And then they voted, and knitting and crocheting, painting, making jewelry.
Come on. Being creative.
Yeah. And then one of the other things I put on there was read the Bible and discuss it.
Yeah.
And that was one of their top choices. So
I love that.
We want to have it be a house, so it's very welcoming. And so we're looking at a place right now. And so we'll have a living room, we'll have office space, but we'll have a place for activities and hopefully even being able to get some of their children involved in some of those activities.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
To help them along the way.
Yes. And
That's
then
beautiful.
long term, we want to open up a residential program that's 2 years
Okay. Yes.
that shelters them, works on their drug addiction, works on their trauma therapy, teaches them how to work.
Okay.
It's a model out of Nashville, Tennessee called Thistle Farms. It's awesome.
Okay.
If you ever want to look it up.
So we definitely going to have you back on the show again because this is just not enough time to get out everything that we want to say. So again, we would like to thank you, Miss Tammy, for being on our show tonight.
Thank you.
Everything that you're doing is amazing. And I'd like to thank my other guests here, my panelists, for all y'all information, y'all input. Again, this is Your Mental Health Matters. Miss Tammy, we have an event coming up on the 25th. Can you let the public know about that, please?
Yes, on February 25th, which is a Saturday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the Boys and Girls Club here in Fort Wayne, 2609 Fairfield Avenue. We are going to have a guest speaker, Miss Kia Bawar.
Yes.
I might have. Go on Eventbrite to sign up and get more information.
Yes.
And as well, it'll be a luncheon. We'll have resources from the community. Awesome. And again, Miss Kia Vawar. I'm sorry.
That's
Miss
okay.
Kia, I'm just going to leave it at that.
Is there a cost to that?
It is. It's $20, and more information is on the Eventbrite. But don't let that be a hinder for not coming.
Time well spent just educating the community about human trafficking. And so again, please tune in next time, the next Friday that will be on air. This is going to be a part 2. So with that being said, please come join us next time. We definitely love having you guys here. Ms. Mildred, as we always say,
always protect your mind.